What's good, y'all? It's Timmy Too Dope. I appreciate you clicking on this video and kicking it with me today. This is the official Clipse Let God Sort 'Em Out album review. By internet standards, I know I'm probably very, very late, but by my standards, we're right on time. An album like this, I personally don't think you can fully give a quality review after just hearing it one time, after just hearing it a couple times, after just sitting with it for a couple days. So I don't want to rush my review. I wanted to take my time and give this album the time and attention that it deserves, because these guys definitely spend a lot of time on this project. So I wanted to give at least a week of letting this album sit with me and to be able to digest this album. At the time of recording, it's been almost 2 weeks, and I've heard this album well over a dozen times front to back. So I definitely think I've had enough time to sit with this album to give a good faith and what I'm hoping to be a quality review. I'm also planning to do a separate video covering some of my favorite lyrics from Let God Sort 'Em Out, so definitely be on the lookout for that as well. But as far as this video, this is more of a traditional review style video, and I'm gonna go track by track. But before we get to the first track, I do want to give some of my just overarching thoughts on the album. First of all, this album just makes me feel cool. Like I miss when rap albums just made you feel cool, even if you didn't fully understand what the rappers were talking about. You know, when we were younger and just listening to rap music, it just sounded and felt cool, and that's exactly what this album did. From the lyrics to the beats, the lyrics were, it's some of the highest tier lyricism and penmanship that I've heard on an album front to back in a long ass time. The Pharrell beats were immaculate. Pharrell on the hooks were just beautiful at times, and just the right touch of softness in a pretty raw and a pretty gritty album. As far as the duration of the album, I've always said, you give me an album that's between like 45 to an hour long and between 8 to 14 songs, I think that's the sweet spot as far as a duration for an album. And this was 45 minutes and 13 tracks. So, it definitely checked off my personal checklist when it came to duration. And yeah, I can't say enough good things about this album. I definitely, from first listen, I had the feeling that this was going to be damn near a perfect album. And I was definitely, that definitely still holds true after giving it over a dozen listens. Damn near a perfect album. There is one minor nitpick that I'll get into later in the video. But like I said, very, very minor nitpick. But I think that nitpick just keeps it from being a personal album. So don't go anywhere. Stick around, and you'll see why I didn't give this album a perfect score. But that's it for my quick little review. Now let's get into the song by song review. Of course, we're going to start at the beginning with the beautiful and gut-wrenching Birds Don't Sing, featuring John Legend, rather, who is always good for, a great, memorable intro. Just beautiful, iconic voice. And, they told a story about why they put, such a heavy and deep and touching and vulnerable song at the very beginning. And it was something like, basically they didn't want it to get lost in the shuffle. If they put this at track 7 or 8 or even the outro, there was a chance that this song would get lost in the shuffle. So when they were sequencing, they said, what better place to put it at the very beginning? And, you know, it might be a little bit jarring to some people, but what I think it does is it humanizes both of them, and it either informs people or reminds people that these two are brothers and they're real people. And if you're you have been a Clipse fan and it reminds you that they're brothers, you know, it's also going to remind you that they're way more than coke rappers, way more than just street rappers. And there's a few more instances throughout this album where they peel back the layers of vulnerability and let you in, like they really never have before. And specifically on this song, they're talking about losing their parents. Like I said, they're both brothers. They unfortunately, somewhat recently, just lost their father and their mother. I think their mother passed first, and then 4 months later, their father passed as well. And unfortunately, Malice was the one who had to find both of them, which they cover in the song. But Push handles the first verse, and he's talking about some of his last conversations, his last memories with his mom, and how his mom kind of lined it up all perfectly for Malice to find him and have, you know, she had all of her affairs in order. And Push was talking about, you know, she was dying without letting him know, and he was in Turks on vacation waiting to hear from Ye or Elon, I think it was. And yeah, just basically detailing their last conversations, you know what I mean? Very touching stuff. Like I said, it definitely, I fortunately haven't lost either of my parents, but I'm sure if you're someone who has, this hits, you know, even more of a tender spot than just thinking about it. Malice holds down the second verse, and he details more on his father, talking about, you know, he went to visit his father. He saw his truck was in the driveway. He knocked 1 time, 2 times. By the 3rd time, a chill ran through his bones, and he realized something was wrong. He went in, found his dad on the kitchen floor, and he was just detailing how he was a father to him for sure, and talking about he provided and pulled doubles, and imagine the disappointment of him when he found base drugs in the cupboard. You know, I provided all this stuff for you. You didn't have to go do that dumb shit, but you went and did that dumb shit. And then he's saying how he wasn't only a dad to him, but he was also a dad to Malice's friends, fishing trips and all that sort of stuff. And then the last bar talking about I love my 2 sons was the code to his phones, detailing how after he passed away, they were going through his phone records and stuff, and a lot of his passwords was IL2MS. You know, I love my 2 sons was the acronym for that. Just very touching stuff. And then my favorite line, spoiler alert if you plan on watching my favorite lyric video, my favorite line of the entire album, but definitely this entire song, he says, the way you loved mama, because remember I said their mom passed prior. Malice says, the way you loved mama, I guess I should have known. Chivalry ain't dead, you ain't let her go alone. Which is just, bro, that shit making Shakespeare blush. You know what I mean? That's one of the best hip hop lines maybe I've ever heard. Maybe I'm a prisoner of the moment, but that's one of the best lines I've heard in a long time, bro. And just poetic, just beautiful, equal parts heart-wrenching and beautiful at the same time. And of course, John Legend with the beautiful hook, the beautiful voice. I think there's a choir in there somewhere as well. But just, I can't say enough good things about this song. And something it's a little anecdotal thing that I was thinking about. The metaphor of birds don't sing, they screech in pain. I do think it's somewhat of a metaphor just for Black pain. The first thing I thought of was the movie Sinners. If you've seen the movie Sinners, they're talking about blues music and how that's born from pain and, you know, the vampires or whatever. I remember the line they said, "We don't want your music, we want your memories," because we can steal your music and play your music similar to how you play it. Maybe not as talented, you know, but we can do something similar and it might sell, it might sound good. But the reason why Black people's music is so impactful and a lot of people connect to it is because the pain behind it, the stories behind it, you know, the blues, how it started, and you can morph that into hip hop. So birds don't sing, they screech in pain. It's not singing, you know, it's not this beautiful chirp, chirp, chirp. It's screeching in pain. Like I'm singing, but I'm singing in pain. I'm giving you my story, my painful story. I might be reaching there, but that's just something I kind of thought of when I first heard birds don't sing, they screech in pain. But yeah, that's the first track. Beautiful, beautiful way to start off with the album. Maybe a little bit jarring, but we don't have to wait too much longer for a song that we a sound that we expect a little more as we move on to Chains and Whips, which of course features Kendrick Lamar. It's abrasive, it's in your face, and it's definitely the most talked about song leading up to the album. This is the song that was the catalyst basically of Clipse leaving Def Jam, paying 7 figures to leave because Def Jam didn't like the optics of Push and Kendrick Lamar linking up on the same song, which are 2 of Drake's biggest ops. And of course, Drake is suing UMG, so they didn't like the way that looked, and they were just not going to put out the album basically, and they wanted to shelf the album. So Push said, you know, you can't just, we're not just going to leave. You can't keep me as a solo artist, because they wanted to keep Push as a solo artist. They said, we're out completely. I'm not staying, and we'll pay 7 figures in order to do that, which is a crazy amount, but that's how much he believed in this verse and believed in this album. So they left, joined Roc Nation, and that's where the album inevitably got put out underneath. So with all that being said, this had some high expectations going into it, and Kendrick's verse definitely lived up to the expectations. The gen scheme, y'all know what I'm talking about. I can't really think of any bars off the top of my head, but the whole entire gen scheme was one of the most impressive things that I've heard this entire year. And I don't really understand the controversy of what they're talking about, because he wasn't really dissing anybody like that. But great Kendrick Lamar verse, as we expected. Of course, the other controversy is Jim Jones, or Push, throwing some shots at Jim Jones. Pretty much his entire verse is taking shots, speaking directly to the soul of Jim Jones. And then Malice, of course, has a great verse himself. But great song, would have fit great on a movie like Django or Sinners or some sort of Western like that. But yeah, great track. And I love how the juxtaposition going right from Birds Don't Sing to something like this, where motherfuckers are, dissing Jim Jones, and Kendrick getting off with the crazy gen scheme. I just like how that the juxtaposition there. Third track, POV, featuring Tyler, the Creator. As soon as I saw Tyler was featured on this, I was real hyped for this. And it's crazy to me how someone like Push, I think I remember him years back talking about, and he might have even had a bar talking about it, how he doesn't do hooks, basically. Like something like he's like too street to do hooks or something like that. And then you fast forward to something like this, to P-O-V-P lows in my back, taking track down south, then she flies back. I just ponytail. One of the greatest hooks, bro. This is gonna be one of the greatest hooks of this entire year. Maybe one of the greatest Clipse hooks ever. Like it's crazy how great and how much of an earworm this hook is. And of course the verses are great. I love how he's talking about you Zeus Network dudes to hear me loud and clear. I love that. I love the he said he tried to mimic Guru as far as like the delivery, and I didn't hear it at first, but then after he said it and I went back, and I definitely hear that. I definitely kind of hear a Biggie influence in his delivery, his cadence. Tyler, I won't say he steals the show, definitely holds down a great verse. You knew it was gonna be some shit when he started off and he rhymed orange, and within his first couple bars, you knew it was about to be some shit. Got a bar in there talking about suing somebody that people thought was towards Drake, but it's just an old friend that he used to collab with and had a falling out with. And then the beat switches when Malice comes back. He has a great bar about I mix it like Mahomes, and I tell him go deep because Patrick Mahomes is mixed and he be throwing the football, go deep and shit. Malice, man, I'll talk more about it in my lyric video, but I think Malice, like full verse wise on all these songs, a majority of these songs, he had the better verse, but I think Push had the better like quotable bars. You know what I mean? If you watch the lyric video, you'll see what I mean. But POV, maybe the best track on here. Out of all these tracks, maybe the standout track for a lot of people. And then we move on to the first singles, So Be It and Ace Trumpets. Like I said, first two singles, I think were great choices for the first two singles. The beats are both, very like luxurious and ominous. I think Pharrell is great at giving you those type of beats. Of course, and I hear people when they make this criticism, I don't fully believe in it, but this is another song where Push is dissing somebody. And I kind of hear it when the people say like, oh, he's got to fucking diss people to create buzz, blah, blah, blah. Like I said, I don't fully agree with it. I just feel like he has some fuck shit that was done to him and he has to get it off his chest. And this is the only way he knows how. It's better than an Instagram rant or a Twitter rant or something like that. But as I said, dissing Travis Scott, you lied in front of me, you cried in front of me, Calabasas stole your bitch and your pride in front of me. Heard Utopia move right up the street and her lip gloss is popping, she ain't need you to eat. Dedicated a whole third verse just to Travis because he was on some clown shit, you know what I mean? Pulled up on him and Pharrell, interrupted a studio session just to play a couple trash songs, played the Meltdown verse without Drake's verse that was dissing Pharrell. And then when the album came out, the Meltdown version had Drake's verse on there that was dissing Pharrell. Just clown behavior, you know what I mean? So Be It also had it almost, the original version didn't come out almost, and that's why it wasn't on streaming after it initially got released. Just the video got released. And then actually I just heard this story. Swizz Beatz, shout out to him, he flew to Saudi Arabia specifically to get this sample cleared for So Be It, literally at the deadline. I think maybe the first like half hour this album came out, So Be It, it was So Be It Part 2, and it had a completely different beat, which definitely didn't sound like it was rapped to that beat. And then after it got cleared, the regular version got uploaded, and it's the version that we know today. So shout out to Swizz Beatz for that. Ace Trumpets was the very first single. Great reintroduction to Malice. One of the best verses on this entire project. Never leave my home without my peace, like I'm Mahatma. From the tribe of Judah, I'm Mufasa. Never turn the other cheek, you'll die at the Oscars. Mikasa Sukasa, like he got his shit off, bro. And if you didn't know who Malice was prior to that, like I said, great introduction. And then I'm sure you were hyped to listen to all the other Malice verses that were on this album. Because as I said, Malice, he might have had the best verses on a majority of these tracks. Not trying to pit them against each other, nothing like that, but naturally that's what happens when you got two people on the track. You say, who's better on the track? Who got who? You know what I mean? Moving on to a beautiful Pharrell hook, bro. All things considered, I call it a beautiful hook now, but I'll be completely honest. When I first heard it, the first time around, I was very, very indifferent about the hook. And then it came back around and I was, Dior suits made of iguanas, stuff the walls for tomorrow. That was my shit, bro. I ain't never had an iguana on my foot a day of my life, but I ain't never stuffed nothing in a wall. You know what I mean? But great Pharrell hook, great Pharrell beat, of course. And as I was saying, a lot more personal stuff on this record. The way he starts it out, all things considered, he says, how you feeling? All things considered, I'm feeling different. My mama's cheek, I miss it. I want to kiss it. And then he gets into talking about his wife having a miscarriage after their baby was asking, their kid, Naj, was asking for another kid. And they pre-ordered the strollers and got everything decked out, all for the baby, unfortunately, not to make it. Not something you would really expect in the midst of a Clipse album, but I'm so glad they got into some personal shit just to shut people up that be talking about all they talk about is coke. Y'all aren't listening, and I can tell. Yeah, much more than coke rap, much more than street rap. Clipse, well-rounded group. Then we get into maybe one of my favorite songs on this entire project, definitely one of my favorites to work out to. Mike Tyson, Blow to the Face, which is one of my favorite titles this year of a song for sure. It's so short that's probably why it gets a lot of replay value as well, but it's a great fucking song. It's just an aggressive sprint, and I love the way they start out both of these verses. The first like 8 of both their verses is just completely Acapulco, just completely acapella. Fuck it, we're going with Acapulco. Just completely, the first 8 of the verses, completely Acapulco. You know what I mean? And I love it. And it really reminds me of like some Biggie shit or like 99 Problems. How, you know, I be having girl problems, I feel bad for you, son. I got 99 problems, but a bitch ain't one. How that's completely Acapulco. And then the beat hits. That's how this is, but with the 8s. And when that beat hits, it's even harder, bro. And, you know, Push did his thing on this verse. I love this Push verse, but this Malice verse, bro. This Malice verse might be one of my favorites of this entire project. It's just like it gives you that old school traditional, you know, are you keyboard killers in your feelings? Mad you and trended, like that type of shit, like with the Kango with the big fucking, you know, chain rope, the Cuban back to back, that type of shit. You know what I mean? Only this isn't my my nitpick I was talking about at the beginning. We'll get to that in a couple songs. Another slight nitpick. This one's unfair. I wish Jay-Z was on this shit. Just hearing the song, hearing the instrumental, hearing what they did with it, but especially after Malice finished his verse by saying like 96 Hove with the bass. I hear Jay-Z after 96 Hove with the bass, beat cutting, and him going, yup. You know what I mean? Coming in like the Diamond Sierra Leone. You know what I mean? Cutting out the beat like that. I don't know. Just a slight nitpick. But regardless, I love the version that we got. The next track is called EBITDA. And if you're like me, you first heard this and you wondered, what the fuck does EBITDA mean? And then you pulled out the Google machine and you looked it up and you found out it means earnings before interest, taxes, and amortization. Or it's just some rich shit that I'm gonna know nothing about, basically. And Clipse, Pharrell, Malice, they have a way of popping that fly shit and making you feel very poor. And that's kind of what this is accomplishing here. But this is one of the few times that I feel like Malice and Push got on the mic and didn't rap with a mean mug. Like this song is like one of the more like lighter songs, got the up-tempo drums. Pharrell starts out the track rapping, you know what I mean? He's I think he's on the hook as well. But yeah, compared to the other songs, this is I don't want to say softer, but this is a lot more a lot lighter compared to some other tracks like Mike Tyson Blow to the Face was right before this, you know what I mean? So nice little break with EBITDA. Very summertime vibes, very probably the funnest track on the album. And then we move on to FICO. And I'll get it out of the way. If y'all watch other review videos, it's been talked about ad nauseum. The internal and external rhyme schemes of both Push and Malice's verse throughout the entire thing. I remember late nights, pissy hallways driving me psycho. The money wouldn't come fast enough. Lonnie's on tightrope, rhyming with the psycho. Your money's just stuck in a rut. Come fast enough. They did that throughout the entire thing. And a lot of people don't recognize it. So a lot of people can't appreciate it. So I don't mind, you know, being the 10th video that you watched that talked about internal and external rhyme schemes, because more people need to know about it so more people can appreciate it. But this featured Stove God Cooks, and Stove God Cooks on the hook, and just the hook, which is my gripe that I was talking about, why my one minor nitpick that keeps this from being a perfect album. You can't have somebody as talented as Stove God Cooks on this album and have him just on the hook. You have to let him get his shit off in a verse. For what he got, for the minutes that he got, he maximized his minutes with this hook. He definitely showed his charisma. He definitely showed some, you know, clever wordplay within a hook, which is kind of hard to do. But I feel like if you're going to kind of introduce the world to Stove God on probably the biggest platform that he's ever had, you got to give the man a verse, man. You got to give him at least a little 8 or something like that. But yeah, just a minor criticism. Front to back, start to finish, this is another one of my favorite songs on the whole album. From one of my favorite songs on this entire album to maybe the most underrated, Inglorious Bastards, bro. I hear a lot of people talk about Mike Tyson blow to the face through FICO being like the best run of the album. You gotta include Inglorious Bastards in that run. There's not too many Clipse songs that I've heard in my lifetime that have made me want to move my feet, bro, that have made me want to fucking dance. I don't think I've ever danced to coke rap, not a day of my life. You know what I mean? But Pharrell did his thing with this beat, bro. Ab Liva, you know, who has been with the Clipse, you know, since their first album, I believe. The way he slides in on this album after the Malice verse, the been playing in the snow like Rudolph, like that, one of my favorite moments on this entire album. The transition was just so smooth. And then in the hook, you know, he says, inglorious, victorious, wide body B.I.G. like Notorious. Notorious, a big guy, but he's comparing that to a car. Wide body B.I.G. like Notorious. The car is a big body like Notorious. And then he says, tell me, is we trafficking or tricking? Somebody needs to show me the difference. And I think this is a reference to the Diddy case, because Diddy just got caught up. The charges that he did get was the prostitution charges, but he was facing sex trafficking charges for flying in these girls to have sex with them, basically. And that's what they used to call tricking, spending money on girls to ultimately sleep with them. That's what they used to know as tricking. But now you're getting legal charges, Fed charges for that same shit we used to call tricking, and now they're calling it trafficking. So he's like, is we trafficking or tricking? Because you gotta tell me the difference nowadays, you know what I mean? Because some definitions have completely changed up. But love this track, probably the most underrated on the entire album. Next up, So Far Ahead, and this song makes me feel like I'm frolicking through a field of people that I'm just better than. Pharrell on this hook, this is one of my favorite hooks I've heard in a minute, bro. It's just so braggadocious, but it's also the perfect amount of like softness to break up that grittiness, as I've said with a couple other Pharrell hooks. But in the hook, he's just telling us how far ahead he is than us, how much better he is than us. And I'm pretty sure I've heard Pharrell basically say the same thing. Like, once he finds out you're on to the same thing that I'm on to, I don't even want that shit anymore. I'm on to some other new shit. You know what I mean? And that's another thing I meant to say about just this album overall. It feels traditional, modern, and futuristic all at the same time. And I think a lot of that has to do with the Pharrell production, and not just production as far as beats, but the production as far as just executive producing this whole thing, basically being the coach that holds everything together. You know what I mean? And then as far as the verses, both Push and Malice have great verses, surprise, surprise. But a couple quotables that stood out to me was Push saying rest in peace to rest in peace to PNB, or me just being me, rest in peace to PNB. I'll probably never eat at Roscoe's, because Roscoe's is where PNB Rock, it unfortunately got murdered. It was in LA, and it was the one that, you know, a lot of people that are from LA, you know, would tell you not to go to. So I don't blame Push at all for having that stance. And I'm sure he's not just talking about that LA Roscoe's. I'm sure he's just saying, just on general principle, on GP, I'm never eating at Roscoe's again because of what happened to PNB and how sad that situation was. And then you move on to Malice's verse. He says, the grass was green on both sides. I done been both Mace and Bethis. So Mace has been both Pastor Mace and he's been Murder Mace. You know what I mean? So he's kind of got that duality where he's seen both sides of righteousness, basically. And just that duality, and Malice said something in a previous song, or it might have been on this verse as well, where he's just saying, like, if I didn't give you both sides, I wouldn't be me. I was the only one to walk away and really be free. As far as I'm concerned, I think that's POV. But yeah, he basically, he said it previously in the album as well. You know what I mean? He wouldn't be him if he didn't give you both sides. So yeah, another great track. I loved how it kind of broke up the monotony, not the monotony, but it broke up the rawness, the grittiness. That Pharrell hook it's an all-timer in my opinion. Second to last track, Let God Sort 'Em Out. It's the title track. Two-parter, Let God Sort 'Em Out / Chandeliers. The way this starts out, it's always the loud mouths that can't count. The right price, I'll put the AR in the saint's mouth. I looked up the lyrics, it says AR in the saint's mouth, but when I first heard it, I heard AR in the safe's mouth, which either way, the way I interpret it, that's a hard bar, bro. That's a hell of a way to start out a track like this. And it's just basically Malice and Push going back and forth, trading bars, 2 bars here, 4 bars here. And like I said, this is a 2-part track. The second half, the Chandeliers portion, has Nas on it. And when they were making this song, Pharrell said, y'all gotta split at 8. Y'all do a 16 on this Chandeliers beat, y'all gotta split at 8. And then Push heard the verse and he said, nah, there's no way, because when you were making that subconsciously, you had to have been thinking about Nas. This is made for Nas. So they called who they called. They called who they called. They got Nas. They got Nas the beat. Nas penned an incredible beat, recorded that shit, sent it back, and we got the verse that we got on the album. A lot of people have the criticism, and I kind of hear them, that this verse is kind of shoehorned in and it's kind of contrived just to get a Nas verse on the album. But ask yourself, if you had an album coming out and you got a Nas verse and it didn't really fit or whatever, you'd find a way to make a Nas verse fit on your album. You know what I mean? Like, don't play yourself. If I had to pick one song that's maybe the worst song, I don't want to say the worst, my least favorite song on the album, it's probably this one. But as I said earlier, that doesn't mean it's a bad song at all. It's just an incredible album, and something has to be my least favorite. And the last track, By the Grace of God, the perfect outro. Again, Pharrell with a beautiful, softer hook, but it's very impactful what he's talking about. Just basically talking about he's seen everything from small businesses to entire empires just absolutely crumble. He's seen it all. He's been in the music business a long time. He's seen it all. And by the grace of God, he's got the life that he's got now. He very easily could have been in prison. He says something about we missed the walls, or we missed those walls. Of course, he's talking about prison walls, and it's so impactful when you think about not Pharrell necessarily, but more Push and Mace and the life that they lived. And, you know, obviously they talk about it in their verse, but the overarching theme is that they very, very, very easily, their lives could have been completely different. They could have been inside those walls. Instead of making those jail calls, those prison calls to their homies and putting money on their books or whatever, that could have been them. But by the grace of God, it's not. It might have been this song, it might have been a different song, but somebody said, my homies that didn't die are up in prison. So again, the homies that aren't in prison, they're dead. And that, again, very easily could have been them. But by the grace of God, it's not. So this song is just reminiscing on that, being thankful for all that, being thankful and grateful for what they do have, the life that this rap stuff has afforded them. Malice, in pretty much every single interview, I heard him say, "My God provides," you know, and I think that perfectly sums up this outro for sure. And that's it for my Clipse Let God Sort 'Em Out review. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. Let me know some of your favorite tracks. Let me know some of your least favorite tracks. Let me know what you wish you would have had on this album. Let me know how you felt about the hooks, about the production, some of your favorite verses. Just talk to me down in the comments, man. I've been dying to talk with some people about this album. And as always, if you made it this far, I'm super appreciative. I know this is a super long video, so if you made it this far, I appreciate you. And as always, if it's not too dope, then it's probably mids.